In order to release fully and deeply, there needs to be support. There needs to be alignment. Relaxing becomes collapsing without alignment. Hi, I'm Grant Kleiman from Darsana Martial Arts. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you'd like to support us or join our online Tai Chi Academy, there are links in the description. All right, let's get to the lesson. One of the most common and often repeated instructions Tai Chi students hear is to relax. This comes from the principle of Fan Song, or simply Song, which I prefer to describe as releasing, unbinding, opening, letting go. While we can discuss the semantics of whether or not relax is a good translation for this principle of Song, I'd rather talk about some misunderstandings that can come from this instruction to relax that can derail your progress in Tai Chi. Each of us comes to the practice with some degree of postural imbalance, and if we focus on relaxing without addressing our alignment, then we can end up actually making those imbalances worse rather than better. One example is the head will be forward, the shoulders will be forward, and this is going to tighten the throat, chest, and front of the shoulders, collapse and put pressure on the back of the neck and the upper back. And the more you relax in this position, the worse that gets. Another common example is the tailbone and sacrum will be lifted, the breastbone will be lifted, and this will close up the low and mid back and put a lot of pressure into the spine. The belly will sag forward, the knees will start collapsing inward because the pelvis isn't situated between the thigh bones properly. Relaxing will exacerbate these issues by putting more pressure on them. Another one is that the hips will be pushed forward, and this will put pressure into the front of the hips, into the low back, and into the knees. And the more we relax here, the more we end up sagging into this posture. And so relaxing becomes collapsing without alignment. Now, fixing this isn't merely a matter of putting the parts of the body in the right positions, because we'll have to contend with habitual tightness in the body. And while there are plenty of exercises we can do to stretch and open that, when you're practicing things like standing in Wuji or other Tai Chi postures, having the right intention for where forces are meant to go while you release tension will help the body to open up and stretch, will help certain things to strengthen and learn to work that maybe have not been working. We want to extend up through the fullness of the neck, so the cervical spine lengthens, the throat lengthens, and this will go all the way up to the Bai Hui point, which is roughly in line with the back of the jawbone at the top center point of the head. So by extending up here, we have our first reference point for where we are directing force. There's this gentle upwardness of intention that opens up the neck and the upper spine. The shoulder should be centered from front to back on the lateral midline. That would run, say, something from the center of the underarm down right to the knob of the hip or the top of the thigh bone, called the greater trochanter. The sacrum and tailbone should extend. The pelvis should sit down between the inner hip space, the quads. The weight should then align over and sink down through the back of the knees. There's a point there called the Wei Zhong point, which should find its way down to the bubbling well or Yang Chuan point. So in essence, we want to extend through the top of the head and suspend it there gently. And then we want to let the rest of the body sink down centrally through the space between the spine and the front of my body, right down to the center of the pelvic floor, a point called the Huiyin point between the anus and genitals. And that should aim directly down to a point between the feet along a line that would cross through the bubbling well points, as well as crossing through the Wei Zhong points in the back of the knee. So none of this is necessarily going to feel relaxing in the typical sense of the word. It's going to feel like work, but as we release tension, as we let the muscles ungrip the bones, as we open the joints, as we open up the internal cavity spaces of the torso and gently stretch them vertically in a very direct line, then that release will serve us, because now the force of gravity is able to pull down through the body in a way that will open up those spaces over time. Another common misunderstanding that can come from this instruction to relax is the notion that relaxing means being super loose and floppy in your movements. What you'll often see is you'll see practitioners doing these very sort of overly exaggerated, super loose and soft movements. And this in their mind is the idea of being relaxed. There are exercises and even phases of training within the form where I will tell my students to move in an extremely loose and soft way to break up some old habitual tension within their body, some holding on to shape. But once they've done that, we need to immediately go back into putting in the aiming of forces through the body, and that means movement will have much more structure. So relaxing is not about having these super floppy movements that swing and move through the body like you're a wacky inflatable arm flailing tube man. What we mean when we say relax, what we mean when we say song, is creating internal pathways for motion within the body. We mean that we don't want to have any obstruction in the way of the transference of force from one part of the body to the next. This is where the phrase from the classics comes in: when one part of the body moves, the whole body is set into motion. What this means is that every single part of the body is connected and that forces transfer through every part of the body in a harmonious, congruent way in order to serve whatever motion intention you have or to transfer whatever forces are coming in. So your movement to be relaxed does not mean it is without alignment and structure. So movements can and should be ultimately quite organized. And it doesn't mean that these more organized movements are any less relaxed or sung or soft. As a matter of fact, it's only by maintaining the alignment of our structures, the alignment of our skeleton, so that we can transfer the force of the ground up through our frame to the top of our head into our hands. When we have that support, then the muscles and the soft connective tissues can release and transfer force down to the ground. The last common misunderstanding from the instruction to relax I want to talk about is just the notion that we're not allowed to use our muscles in Tai Chi, or that we don't use our muscles in Tai Chi, and that in some way any sort of use of muscle is incorrect. We don't want to use localized muscular mechanical action in the typical way we would, feeling the resistance of whatever it is that we are trying to move or manipulate against that contraction and working right into that resistance. We do want to song. We do want to release the tension from the muscles, but we are using the muscles and the connective tissue. It's all part of the same system. We use them elastically. They will engage, and your muscles will need to develop and become strong in the Tai Chi way. So if you think that while you're training, you shouldn't be feeling any kind of muscular effort anywhere in your body, it's just not the case. Let's say you're in single whip for a moment. It's a fairly universal posture. It's pretty similar in most systems and styles. If you are in single whip and you're working on release, that requires the work of muscles. Now, you can overwork them by being tense, by actually grabbing on with the muscles. I can grab on with my shoulders, I can grab on with my thighs, I can grab on with my core, and that's wrong. I do want to sung. I want the muscles to open up and release and come off the bones, and they will pull and they will stretch. But the thighs, the calves, the muscles in my feet, the muscles in my shoulders, they will be working. I'm just not actively contracting them. I'm focusing on the directions of force through my body. But it doesn't mean my muscles aren't working, and it doesn't mean that in the process of this training, my muscles aren't going to feel work and work quite a bit. As a matter of fact, as your body is learning what muscles should be working and what muscles should be releasing, you're going to feel so much work that your body is likely to start trembling. Your legs will oftentimes tremble. There will be muscles that are working that are just not used to working. And in that process, it's going to be intense. So don't make the mistake of thinking you're not supposed to work your muscles. Hopefully this helped to clarify some of those common misunderstandings that can come from the instruction to relax, and maybe have a better understanding of how the concept of relaxing does and doesn't relate to the principle of song and what we really mean about relaxing in Tai Chi. Relaxing in Tai Chi isn't exactly relaxing in the sense of sitting back on a comfortable chair with a nice drink. However, over time, learning to release and align and find greater balance and harmony in the body can actually become relaxing on a much deeper level, not just a physical level, but even a psychological level. Some of our tension in our body comes from the way that we unconsciously imagine ourselves moving, standing, and being. And that's a part of our personality, and it expresses in our body through the shapes and tension that we hold. Releasing is a very, very deep process in Tai Chi, where we're not just learning to release physical tension, but we're learning to release tension that is held within the mind. In order to release fully and deeply, there needs to be support, there needs to be alignment, there needs to be the aiming of forces in the body so that we reduce the necessary stress for holding and being in balance, and that balance can become something that is more intrinsic and innate within our postures and movements.